Salve, this is Jeff.
This is David.
Hi, David.
Hi, Jeff.
What are your feelings on horror video games?
I believe it is well documented that
Well documented, you say.
the only reason I play them is because you make me.
Yes, okay. So, what are some horror video games that I have made you play?
Silent Hill
Yes,
2.
very good. Yes.
Silent Hill 3.
Also a good choice, yes.
PT.
Yes. Very memorable.
Eternal Darkness.
Yes. That one is not fun to play, but
Nope.
I still like it.
Yep. And Soma.
Hey, we're talking about Soma.
Right. Also, Enemy Within, or whatever that game is called.
Evil Within.
Evil Within, yep.
Although Evil Within 2 is so much better than the first one. We already did a recommendation.
I haven't played it, but all right, Soma.
We are going to be playing through, well, in the background here, we're going to be talking over it mostly. This is the, actually, I'll turn the light down more, so.
Oh, that's nothing.
Down.
Yep.
This is the intro of the game, Soma. The first, well, approximately 31 minutes and 4 seconds.
No, that's
approximately.
for the scan.
Soma is a horror game.
Ashley,
It is made by Frictional. Frictional, of course, are the people that did Number series, which probably not as many people have heard of, but the Amnesia series, probably most people have.
Yeah, a lot of people have heard of that one.
So Amnesia Dark Descent is, and in this game, and then to number 4, it has a very similar style. It has sort of the modern, I guess, walking simulator style. In this case, it's the horror games that don't feature combat. It's more of just like hiding or avoiding. And that continues in this one. Amnesia: The Dark Descent is sort of just a grimdark, whatever, like blood, violence, torture, death, whatever. Who cares?
Torture porn, yeah.
Yeah. So not scary, kind of gross. The parts that are actually very unnerving and scary are like in the demo. So if you've played the demo of the game, you've actually played the best part. It's like the sewers, the invisible things, and
Right.
there's a lot of good. There's good potential there. And I personally didn't play Machine for Pigs, so I can't speak on that one. But that was another one that it does have a great name, at least.
Yeah. Also, I noticed you're kind of just throwing some things around the apartment.
It's a game where you can throw things.
Yeah.
Well, you can physics them around,
Now
and that's just one of the simple joys of this video game.
Yes.
Swear that guy has the memory of a goldfish.
Look at that beautiful Canadian sky.
Didn't I?
Right. Canada.
Soma is one of the best horror games ever made.
It is the only horror game where I feel like from beginning to end,
Better late than never.
it's phenomenal is not the word I'm thinking about. I had you play through large chunks of it because again, I am a small child.
Yes, you don't respond well to the oppressive and highly tense atmosphere that much of the game. Not this particular intro. This is kind of a calm before the storm.
Oh no, I spent like an hour and a half in here just throwing things on the toilet because again, I'm a small child.
And yes, you can stack things up in the toilet. It's great.
Yeah.
In the game, we're actually we've been in a car accident. We're going to get a
Don't wanna keep the
experimental
doctor
brain
waiting.
procedure done, and he's looking for the tracer fluid that's going to be used in the scan,
radioactive
which
tracer fluid.
is actually sort of randomly placed in the apartment when you start the game. So there's like different places it could be. So the first time I had played the game, it was in the bathroom. It's not actually in the bathroom. So the part of me going around and looking for it is legit because I haven't played this since it came out like in 2015, I think.
So
Anyways, that's the context for what's going on right now.
So I was saying, like, even though I wasn't playing through it, I was completely engaged in the game the entire time. And the sections that you made me play through were specifically horrifying to me and to you.
Yes, this game is a game that has no villains. It is about people in extremely horrible, existentially horrible situations, and how they deal with them. and all of the sort of twists and turns are the entire game is very focused on the ideas of identity and
It's kind of like Swapper, but done way better.
yeah. It is very similar to Swapper actually in a lot of ways. If you've played that's more of like indie puzzle platformer side scroller version of this, which is the indie walking simulator / hide from monsters. There are monsters in the game.
I never found that book
added,
when I was playing.
They added in a safe mode where you can't actually die. You can, because we've discussed in previous videos, the chase in these kinds of games is only good if you barely make it. If you don't see, there's no tension at all, then it's like you just walk through a room and nothing happened. But if you like get chased and you're caught and then you die, then there's no tension anymore. It could still be tense, but then you get to the point where like, okay, so the thing comes from that place and then it moves to the left and I just have to wait and then I go and you can get mechanical.
Right, which
especially
is
if you have to repeat things. Yeah, this is very much more of a story kind of experience kind of thing in the walking simulator genre style. So having you walk through the corridors and hide from things, it's most effective when you're successful the first time. So I at least understand why a safe mode would be good.
Yeah. I mean, it also would have made me a little bit more willing to play more of the game. You just ignored Jesse.
I did ignore Jesse's. We're gonna skip that conversation so we can get to the brain clinic. Just a little
the
bit
meat and potatoes.
You can listen to that conversation if you want to play it on your own time. Yeah, that's an example.
I will say this game does character choice in a very, very good way. Because
you remember, it's like BioShock, but then like good.
It's. I would put it more like, hey, you remember in Nier where you had character decisions that didn't impact anything other than your own self? Those are good character decisions, or they can be good character decisions when done well. Like when, okay, this decision ultimately only matters to you.
Hello?
Yes.
So
and there's some very good exploration of the central concept of identity and it's very good, and I don't want to just say what it's about because the whole game revolves around this premise, and it's a science fiction premise. And the entire, even everything in this first part is all foreshadowing. Even throughout the rest of the game, it's constantly foreshadowing the concepts that it's trying to sort of present you with, which is they're not, and they're also not by themselves like novel. Well, it like a lot of science fiction, it depends on where you come to these things from. Whether or not something is a new idea is not really important because it's the execution and sort of the emotional impact, and those things are a lot less. They're a lot harder to nail down because you can have like a good or bad. Let's use an example like The Matrix, which is not what this game is about.
No,
but like the concept of your entire world is a simulation or something. I don't know, maybe you could read that into this game, but my point is that it's a different. We'll talk about The Matrix. So there's I don't want to limit the interpretations, but let's say that for the sake of argument, you have something like The Matrix, which is very famous and good action movie, and then it has a good core concept about the nature of reality and like what is real and all this kind of stuff. Well, there's plenty of stories that deal with like, oh, it was actually a fictional reality the whole time and are terrible, like Star Ocean.
Star Ocean till the end of time. Make sure you specify that.
Retroactively and interactively the entire of Star Ocean, because
Star Ocean 2 is perfect. Star Ocean till the end of time does not exist. I say perfect. It probably is problematic.
I will stab you with this needle. I will stab you with this needle.
No, that's super not okay.
That's not safe. We'll just leave that on the ground.
So something I will say, I compared this game to Swapper, but I said it was good.
Oh, hi. Didn't hear you come in.
I like Swapper. It's fine.
Simon
I
Jarrett,
like
right?
Swapper okay, but Swapper
Just Mr. Munchie,
gives
but
you
I'm
a
working
whole
on it.
bunch of stuff
Actually
and then
helping you
says,
right now.
we're guiding you
Is this
towards a
part of your thesis
conclusion.
work?
Yeah.
This is the
It's a study
conclusion
I'm
we
doing
want
with
you to
my
have, but
colleague
we're leaving
Paul
it kind of open-ended.
We
Whereas
hope
in
to
this game
design a
is,
gentle way
it's
to work with
open-ended.
brain reconstruction.
Here's
Help people
here's the
like you.
information. We ain't guiding you to
Did you,
crap. You're gonna figure
take
this
the
out on
tracer
your own.
fluid?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yeah,
Great.
the
Well, we can start
the
whenever
the
you're
way
ready.
that the player's choices, well, the way that the character's choices impact the story is very good, and the way that the things branch, so to speak, is good. But it's not this is not like a Telltale game, not really, where it's even in the Telltale style of like the plot is there and then you'll plug in different characters or different moments depending on your personal decisions about characters. That's not really what this is about.
No.
The overall
Let me just
horror
get this
of the
out of the
game
way.
is horror of
You are
like
Simon Jarrett, correct? Toronto,
um,
Canada,
imprisonment within the
Munchie,
self,
born
like
1988, July
loss of
16th.
identity,
Right.
like
Version 6. Good.
deep
All files
water,
Well, this hurt.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
Never heard about his
claustrophobia,
Yep.
Cameras would steal their
despair
souls.
unto
That's
death,
so.
like
Huh. Hope
hopelessness.
they're wrong.
So it is not a cheery game.
Say cheese.
Which is weird
is-
because you made me play through
yeah.
it on during Christmas.
I did,
Yeah.
because I was like, this is an important this is an important video game. Frictional finally did everything right, because they had been getting some of the things right in their previous games, or like even in Penumbra, like they got the interactions with the environment right, and they were doing that way before like a lot of the other walking simulator type games came out. So like they had the novelty of like, for opening a door, you would like click the mouse and you would have to drag the mouse in order to
Munchie?
simulate the motion of your hands
something
opening a
go
door
wrong?
or a drawer or things like that, which is in Amnesia, and it's also here, even
This
though
isn't
I'm playing the
funny.
PS4 version. But yes, you'll have like a button where you can grab, like R2 or something, and then you use the sticks to simulate like the motion of pulling or pushing, which those little things are nice. This kind of thing
How did I
would
get here?
obviously probably be very, very good in VR if you have like a full
figure this out.
like super expensive VR thing. I don't actually know if there's a VR version of this. It seems like it'd be criminal if there
To
wasn't,
make things
but
worse.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
our main character has gone to the brain scanning machine, who was not a doctor but was working on his doctoral thesis work on
Right. And now you're here.
Yes, his Dr. Munchie says, or possible Dr. Munchie says that he is going to take a scan of your brain so that he can build a simulation of it so that he can figure out what the best treatments are. This kind of thing that concept is great because it sounds reasonable and doable. Almost like a hard sci-fi concept
Right.
of like.
And a lot of this
we'll-
game
we'll-
is hard sci-fi
Yes,
stuff.
there is actually a lot of hard sci-fi. There's some fantastical elements, but for the most part, a lot the horror of it, aside from the self and
Hey,
others and
safety fire extinguisher.
and darkness and claustrophobia, is also plausibility
Yeah. Sorry.
to a certain extent. So there's that level of horror too. I'd say there's. I would be reductionist. There's like two broad types of like horror or reactions to horror, types of horror. Let's say like the natural and the supernatural types of horror. There's the person, and again, these straw men are filled with straw, stuffed to the brim. They're ready to just be lit on fire. There's the type that is scared by supernatural horror, but not so much like natural horror. So if like the twist is that it's like some sort of spiritual evil or some sort of grudge, or like in a Japanese ghost sense, or like that kind of thing, some sort of non-explainable, some cosmic horror or something, then it's terrifying. But then if it turns out, it was a weird dude living in the walls the whole time, it's like, So I fall into that camp where I much prefer cosmic horror and supernatural horror. And then if things like the twist is like, it was like a real person all along, then it's usually like, okay, I mean, if that were to actually happen to you, yes, that would be extremely terrifying. But then it just kind of breaks down. So I'm like, wait, then that means that like when that sound was happening earlier, were they just like waiting off screen making? Anyways, it just like begs all these questions that I tend to not pay as much attention to if it's more of a psychological thing or a cosmic thing or supernatural. But then there's the opposite kind of person that is like, oh, it's a ghost, it's not real, so I don't feel any kind of tension at all. But then like if there's a serial killer involved, it's like, oh, this is terrifying because this is something that could happen because there are these types of people that exist in the world. So if it's like a home invasion movie or something.
Also, thank you for setting that chair right.
It's important. Some things have to be in their place.
Yep.
I think that this is a good balance because it has a hard sci-fi sort of bent. There is a certain verisimilitude which makes the horror much more palpable, I feel. Also, when weird things happen, there's a lot of great sounds. This game has fantastic sound. I would recommend just like putting the headphones on and playing it in a dark room because it's so good. You'll hear like these weird electromagnetic and like computery kind of glitching noises and all this kind of like deep bassy like nonsense whenever something strange is afoot. Sometimes literally afoot, sometimes not. Which is actually kind of happening here, even though I've got the sound turned down because I'm just kind of like,
Right.
But
I
it's got
have
like this bassy, glitchy rumble when things are going poorly. And even playing through this intro again is still very tense. There is a tiny bit of mutability to like where things, cause it's not a 100% like jump scare recreation every single time you go through the game. There is a little bit of variation, and also for the most part it is not a game of jump scares at all. It's more of like, here's the vast emptiness of something. Like, think about it.
Yep.
It's like even like the creatures, of which there are some creatures, because I mean, mentioned before, it's a game where there's no combat, but you do have to like occasionally hide or run away.
Right.
There's in the best Silent Hill sense, there's also a sort of like melancholy and sadness associated with everything, not just like grimdark horror. So it's never going to be just like, I don't know, like a gross flesh monster that has like knives for hands and then also its head is knives or something.
Right. It's not a monster that when you look at it looks like somebody getting raped under the covers on a mattress. It's like that.
It's not that.
It's not that on the nose. But no, you say this game isn't like grimdark, but because it does the hopelessness thing, because
it is probably one of the grimmest and darkest games in game stories that I've ever played, but I wouldn't describe it as grimdark.
Because like the whole conceit from start to finish is, it's not like, okay, well this is absolutely absurd. It's like, oh, and like you get to parts of the game where you see
like
how
even this, where this is like a grisly sort of horror movie scene where there's like obviously a decapitated body and there's like blood everywhere. The reasons that these things happen in the world that you're in, they're reasonable and they're not the results of I mean, it's a long game and there are characters and there are, there's conflicts. But by and large, it's people trying to do what they think is the right thing.
Right.
In an extremely, extremely bad situation. Right. And some of those things are, unpleasant and like immoral sometimes. But it's never the point where it's like there's never like the person that you're talking to the whole time was the killer all along and now they're chasing you, and it's like, okay, so it's not like the ending of Sunshine or something like that,
right?
Where it's like they build all of this like thematic material and like dread and like science fiction setting and then just be like, oh, I don't know, it's like a slasher or something.
Including pilot
The dread and the foreshadowing and all of the sort of science fiction concepts build on each other until the ending, which is the most like devastating, terrifying, heartbreaking, bittersweet ending to a video game that I've ever experienced, which is one of the main reasons that I recommend it so highly, is because almost all games, movies, stories, books have terrible endings because no one knows how to end a story. You have to have plot and character catharsis.
Yep.
So like the characters have to have a conclusion. Not necessarily like a happy ending, but they have to have some sort of conclusion. You can't just let them dangle. But you also have to have like a intellectually satisfying plot conclusion. I would also say that like there's like the base layer of the plot, and then like the thematic layer of the plot also needs to be resolved. And this like the ideal ending I have in my mind is one that does all three of these things, where you have the characters that you've been sort of hanging out with the whole time have a definitive conclusion that follows from their choices and also from the plot.
Also, I'd like to point out that moment is when I gave you the controller.
There's some scary noises, but we have already gotten the key card, so we're just gonna leave.
Yep.
We don't need to go that other way. You need a plot conclusion. Plot usually sums up.
Also, by the way, we're
mostly
underwater.
an apparat. Yes, we are actually underwater. There's more similarities to BioShock than my initial flippant comment about BioShock but good.
Right.
What I mean when I say BioShock but good, I mean that I don't like the last quarter/third of BioShock very much.
But otherwise, it's great.
But otherwise, it's great.
Yeah. This. As he was saying, like a lot of games and media, books, whatever, they don't have endings, or if they do have an ending, it's not particularly good or satisfying,
or it doesn't work on the levels that I sort of set out. So where you have literal plot, thematic plot, and then character catharsis. All three of those, like the trinity.
But this game has that.
It does. It covers all three of those very, very well. And especially the thematic ending, or the thematic catharsis, which is foreshadowed throughout and is built upon and is examined and re-examined, is relatable and, like I said, deeply unsettling to the point where it is something that you kind of think about, which is another great sort of like compliment towards like a piece of horror.
Yeah.
Or like it stays with you because there's a plausibility to it, and you can kind of like you can go through scenarios where you're like, what if something similar happened to me? Like, how would you actually react? And you can really ruminate on it, which is also something that it doesn't happen. Which, and it like most things subjectively. This depends on time, place, and what you're looking for and this kind of thing. So expectations are very important, especially if you're going into a game like this. And if you're thinking that it's going to be like a slasher movie or something, then you'll probably be disappointed, because you'll be like, oh, like I went through that hallway and nothing happened. It was just like a sound. Like, so you might be expecting something different.
Yeah.
Or like you'll be like, oh, those monsters aren't scary. They're just, and then insert like a reductive, description of like their physical characteristics.
A dude in
like,
a suit of armor.
Yeah, it's just a dude in a suit of armor. These bosses are just dudes in suits of armor. It's like, whatever. That's not scary. I'm not scared by dudes in armor. Like, okay. Like, it depends on what you want out of the experience. What I wanted out of the experience before I started was a sort of what I hoped was a thought-provoking science fiction story, but I wasn't actually expecting that. What I wanted was like a pretty good first-person horror game that was science fiction themed and was by the people who made other games that I did not fully like, but very much appreciated. So, it's kind of like, it's like, hey, they're out there, they're doing their thing, they have their niche. And they're continuing to make a living doing this thing that they love. And I'm like, that's great. I want to see the things that they do. And then like the last half of like Dark Descent, I'm like, it's okay. But in this one, everything was great. There is a robot with a lady's voice on the ground,
Asking you not to unplug it.
asking you not to unplug it. That's... I feel really bad. This game is also very good for people with empathy.
Yes.
And by good, I mean very bad for them. Another thing that I'd like to set expectations going in is to go into it with like an immersive attitude. Try and envision yourself in the scenario, because there's for any kind of horror product there is a reductive way that you can view it that robs it of its scariness. So like I said, it depends on your sort of posture towards the work. So you could just be like, well, it's just a video game and it's just someone voice acting a character, and I'm just using physics to like move an object around, and you could be like that, and you're like, oh, it's not scary. It's it's like, oh, this is interesting that someone made this way, or maybe you appreciate it on a different level. And of course, whatever, you can get what you want out of a video game or not. I just feel like this is the way that I approached it, and I want to at least explain it in such a way that someone else coming into it would have like what I envision is the best experience possible. And I feel like going in, being very sort of introspective, very empathetic to characters, makes some of this... It increases the horror of the situations that happen.
Yeah.
Upslot, what's going on?
But it also makes it...
I just sort of woke up here.
In the room right now?
So the original Mass Effect is an example.
Is that right?
So the original Mass Effect, which I really love, Mass Effect is a great game, great universe. There is a point in the story where you have to decide between party members. It's very much like a who has to die situation. And up until that point, I had never spent that much time thinking about something in a video game before. And again, because of how you approach the work depends on whether or not that was meaningful for you. There's time, there's place, there's like empathy. Like if you didn't care for the characters in the first place, then it doesn't really make that much. Or if you cared for one much more than the other one and found like one of them extremely annoying and one of them very endearing, then it's not really as much of a choice. But if you like me, I was like kind of liked both of them, found them endearing enough, maybe a little flat, but it came to the point where it's like this is an extremely tough choice and is one of the reasons why I love the game so much. Also the commercial sort of advertising the first Mass Effect, which is just Shepard getting a distress signal about someone like, we're under attack, we're going to die, please send help, this is a distress call, anyone. And then it just has him like turning it off and ignoring it, and it was just like tough decisions have to be made, because I always remember that commercial, because I was like, yes, I want to play that video game, I want to go to there.
Right.
I was like, I don't know if that kind of thing can be replicated in a video game, but Mass Effect did it very well, and there's a lot of emotional inner turmoil in this game that I do not get from other video games.
Right. No, this you were
some
talking
things
about.
are even tangential to the main plot. Well, I mean, it's important about the things you have to do in order to get to the end of the game. Sure, yes,
Yeah.
it's things you have to address, but there are things that you don't have to do, and some things that you do have to do to self and others. That is really makes you think.
This
And it's done well and not in a crappy way like the ending of The Last of Us.
Yes.
Or the last third Bioshock one.
So, like, you're talking about the question you spent the most time considering. Like, that super would have been this game for me if you and I, one, didn't have a time limit, and two, if you hadn't been like, David, you need to make a decision now. It's been like 5 minutes. We gotta.
Yes, there was because we only have so much time to play
Right.
video games in the exact same spot of physical space.
Right.
You know, like yearly. There was the sort of a time element to it that, you know, was kind of pushing things along. But yes, that's his best experience slowly. I think the first time through this game, it took me about 15 hours. Mm-hmm. If you're just going to run through the game, which again I would suggest not doing. Mm-hmm. You can obviously get through it a lot faster.
Speed runs like an hour.
I don't know. I think actually the speed run's probably about 2.5 hours. There's a lot of things that actually I think end up kind of not being able to be skipped, or
they skip a lot of stuff.
Waiting for cutscenes and stuff like that, and I don't know.
The
speed.
You keep talking.
Forget the speed run. That's not really the. I love watching speed runs for games that have a lot of technical game to them. More so.
I mean, this one does involve a lot of clipping, but
yeah. So if it's just like clipping and stuff, is like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, it's physics objects, and you can get into weird situations. But I digress. Soma is. It's like top tier. It's like on the mountain of horror video games. It's up there with Silent Hill 2. It's up there with The Evil Within 2, which was also surprising because I would put this higher than The Evil Within 2 because I like The Evil Within 2 a lot, and there is more game to The Evil Within 2, and my surprise at how much I liked it relative to the first one is also kind of, you know, it's like, because I actually liked the first one a lot, but I totally understood why people didn't. So I was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was like, I get it. I was like, I totally understand. But the second one, I'm just like, they made something really good. This is weird. Hold on.
They just made a good. Oh, they made a good game. Okay.
But that doesn't have. I don't feel like it has the same level of thematic catharsis, which is what elevates this.
So. In the pantheon of horror games you have made me play, because you find them to be well-told stories or very culturally important or any number of things, you just really like them and you like watching me freak out when I play games.
I do like that part too. So that's kind of nice.
Of all of them, like, this is my favorite one. Soma is... It is the game where I felt like when I was having to make decisions that I had to think about them because, as you said, if you have empathy, this is a hard game to play. But also the story, like the characters and the story, like by the end of it, I was just like, okay, well, it's dusty in here. Weird.
It's dusty. I've
cut all these onions.
My emotional batteries have been completely drained.
Weird. It is just hands down a phenomenal game. And there are a couple of like the hiding from monsters moments that were but like overall, considering how many hours we put into the game, it was like, oh, these 20 seconds weren't like the most best when the other like 15 hours and 40 seconds were amazing. So yeah.
So I think that or at least I hope we've done a good job of talking around the game, because the plot and the themes of it are best experienced, or as you go through. But I will say, I mean, obviously we did cover like the first little bit, where after this you go and you have to find
whoever was talking to you.
You find the person who's talking to you. You try and figure out, why you're in this place. It's also a very good story for people that are extremely versed in, science fiction media, because whenever I go into a story like this, I'm always asking the same questions I always do in a science fiction story, which is like, I'm like, okay, is this person really this person? Is this a clone? Is it time travel? Is it a simulation? Is, like, go through the list of like science fiction, like plot twists and cliches, and like, which one is it? Or is it like a new twist on one? Or is it, is it simpler than that? It's not like a zombie movie that just like inexplicably is in a world where no one has ever heard of a zombie before or something. Not to say that it's fourth wall breaking, which I also find
annoying,
tiring and annoying in excess. It's just that it seems it. I guess the cliche is that like it treats its audience with respect.
Right. It doesn't. You're not stupid.
Mm-hmm. You can understand what's happening, and you can get the implications of it.
Right.
And it's still a video game, so you can still find like audio logs or text logs to expand on characters and plot
Or
points.
literally
so that's
just
always possible.
read text. Like it's something that I really appreciated in this game, and later on when I played through Gone Home, I really like the fact that you don't have somebody telling you what's going on. You're reading a note that somebody left for somebody else, or the environment is teaching you what happened, and I really enjoy that, and that's done very well in Soma.
Yep. Even like that dead body that was just kind of like seems like a typical like scary bloody scene in a horror game.
Yep.
When recontextualized through the entire game, it makes a lot. There's reasons for these things to happen.
It wasn't just here's bloody to be bloody.
Going back to the beginning, I'm like, yes, I understand why these things are happening. Instead of being like, oh, okay, this is just like they wanted it to be creepy and moody at the beginning so that, you'd be on edge. It does both things instead of just one thing.
There's a reason for you to be creepy, for it to be creepy and moody, for you to be on edge. It is
so
established and paid for.
It's so good. More people should play it.
Really, yes.
It's inspiring. Like I said, it's emotionally draining and extremely tense and very very difficult when you consider like the themes and whatever. You keep harping on the themes, but I was going to say also because I was going off on 100 tangents in my brain and I forgot the thing I was saying 5 seconds ago.
Yep.
So sorry to interrupt you again, but. Despite all of that, as we've seen, because this is just the first 30 minutes, yes, there is a component of it taking place, underwater, which is where the BioShock comparisons come in. The ocean is terrifying.
Yes.
And in addition to all the existential horror, there's the horror of the void, of the abyss, of the deepness of the ocean that speaks to me. So,
yep.
Yes, that is something that is a very prominent part of the story as well.
Yeah. This game, I should stress, if you are coming to this game expecting like a Resident Evil or a Silent Hill, you will not find it.
It's definitely closer to a Silent Hill.
It's closer, but
it's not explicitly just a psychological horror mixed with cosmic horror mixed with grimdark, which that's what Silent Hill is for the most part. It's done extremely well in Silent Hill 2 and then very poorly in most of the other ones. So.
Right, but there's no inventory management. There's no like the puzzles you solve are not like arbitrary or weird. It's just like, hey, you need to go do this thing. Here is how you would do it, and realistically speaking, like maybe there's an extra step or two that wouldn't be in there in the real world, but it's not like, all right, well, go find this, like the tired joke of working for Resident Evil Company would suck because you need like 8 emblems to get to use the bathroom.
Do you remember the dog emblem? Like, no, I just have the lion emblem. It's like, well, I guess you can't go to the men's restroom, so just use the women's restroom. I hope someone hadn't also brought in the eagle emblem because they might be able to lock you in there. Yeah. There's not that.
It's none of that. Like the obstacles you are overcoming make sense, and it is never a case of, well, they couldn't really figure out how to block me from coming here, so they have put up like police tape that all of a sudden you cannot get past.
I mean, there's still a little bit of that.
There's a little bit, but
it's not
a
police
lot.
tape so much as like black drippy gross goo. So,
right,
which is the theme. There's a lot of drippiness.
There's a lot of that, but it's not the lazy like what was it in Earthbound? They're like, well, we don't want you to go this way, so we have made a giant pencil that blocks your way, so you need to get a pencil eraser to get rid of that so you can get past. It's not that. It's all the obstacles are good.
Yep.
Just
recommended. Soma.
Yeah, it's recommended, and as Jeff said, Yeah, this game's really good, and I hate horror games. I hate horror games. I hate them so much, and this is a good game.
Okay, we did it.
So
I guess we do that. Yeah,
I should do the bit at the end while my cat is trying to eat the pulls on the window. Oh, and he jumped down. Good.
Okay, the cat is out of the picture.
Nope, he's still trying. Whatever. I'm going to focus. We've moved, so I'm not in a closet anymore, which is nice. So if you like this content, you can go to our Patreon where you can pledge to give us so much per month, which makes this a lot easier to do because it gives us funding to pursue other projects while we're doing this on top of freeing up time. If you can't do Patreon, tips on PayPal are also greatly appreciated. If you can't do that, tell other people about the channel, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff.
We'll even put in a call to action.
Oh,
instead of just being like, comment, subscribe. What are some of your favorite horror video games?
Mm-hmm.
And why? And
why?
What elements of the horror genre appeal to you? Are you more of the the dread, nothing happens but it's just an atmosphere of terribleness, or is it more melancholy, existential horror, cosmic horror? Is it more just gross things happening? Which is another, like a slasher, American style slasher movie.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Soma.
It's like half a face.
But it's not, but not the half that you expect. Not the half you expect. It's an inside joke.
It's an inside joke, yes.
But also the title screen is kind of half a face, but not half you expect. Okay.
Yeah.